Welcome everyone to yet another episode of Omkara Pathshala. There are so many IPOs coming in, but there are very few interesting ones coming in. So we thought of focusing on another IPO, which is Vijaya Diagnostics. Honestly, 5 years back when we thought of healthcare in India, it was always hospitals. It was majorly Apollo or someone could thought of Max Healthcare or Fortis. But in the last few years, we have seen a number of entities which are coming out of that healthcare industry, and we are lucky to learn from Vijaya Diagnostics today. As always, I'm joined by Tejas. He's the head of research and director of research at Omkara Capital. We also have a new chap with us, Kanil. Okay, he tracks the sector and he comes from Omkara Capital. And I'm very blessed to have the entire team of Vijaya Diagnostics. Shuprita Reddy, she's the CEO. Sunil Chandra, who is the executive director, and Raju sir, who is the CFO. Thank you everyone, especially the team, for joining from Vijaya Diagnostics. One disclaimer before I start, that Omkara Capital has no business alliances or any business terms with Vijaya Diagnostics at all. We don't deal anything with them. This episode is entirely catered so that we learn from the management. That's all. And request to make it as simple as possible in terms of the language we use, whether it is Hindi or English. Once again, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Paranjit.
Thanks so much, Paranjit.
Lovely. So, I always say that before we start the business, let's focus on the promoters. Okay, the PPP model, what we say, promoters, product, and then price. So if I talk on the promoters, first of all, please tell us what is Vijaya Diagnostics? How was it born? Where it was born? Who are the promoters? What has been the journey of Vijaya Diagnostics?
Sure, Varinder. So Dr. Surendra Reddy is a founder and the promoter of Vijaya Diagnostic. And he started Vijaya with a vision of providing comprehensive diagnostics all under one roof at affordable prices. He's actually a first-generation entrepreneur from an agricultural family from a town called Nellore. The first one in the family to have gone out, done medicine, is a radiologist by profession. And he was working at a government hospital then, and it's a time that he realized that patients were having to go to different places for pathology tests, radiology tests, which was causing a lot of inconvenience and also a lot of delay in the treatment process itself. So that was the time he decided to quit. This is way back in 1981. We started our first center in Himayatnagar, Hyderabad, in about 1,200 square feet, offering both pathology and radiology. We continued to grow with this single center till the early 90s, and then realized a need to grow and expand and get closer to our customers. And then we started our second center. We haven't looked back since then. Today we've grown thoughtfully, steadily, and conservatively. And we have 81 centers spread across Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, National Capital Region, and Kolkata, with 11 reference labs. And Dr. Reddy started this to create convenience, and he is a very quality conscious person. So through the journey, it's always been on what we bring in as best-in-class technology. And at the same time, it was very important to keep the prices affordable so that we could reach the common man and give him the best. So with that, all of our 11 reference labs are accredited, and every lab that we open gets accredited within the first year itself.
So sorry. Ma'am, we'll come to the business later, but Surendraji is the founding chairman of the company, right?
Absolutely.
Is it a family-run business? How is it like, So
Dr. Reddy started it off as a proprietary concern, Varinder. So it was a proprietary concern till about 2002 when we made it a private limited company. So Dr. Reddy is our father. Sunil is my brother, who's the executive director. And we've been we don't even call it as business. It's like family for us. We've grown in it. We've seen it. It's like almost a sibling for us. So that's how it's been. And of course, we are a small family, just four of us. So that's
just to pick more on this, because I really want to know this. So, Surendraji is how many brothers and sisters Surendraji has? Like, in your family, is it the only business as Vijaya Diagnostic what you have, or there are other businesses as well? And in terms of siblings, you two are brother and sister, you mentioned?
Yes.
Yes.
So our father, of course, the founder, Dr. Surendra Reddy, he has siblings. He has two brothers, sisters, but they are not really in business, and of course, they are not part of Vijaya Diagnostic. And in fact, them and they've not been part of other businesses also.
Got it, got it. And from Dr. Sridhar Reddy's side, you both are as
Varinder, Dr. Reddy is purely from an agricultural family, and he's the first one in the family to have come the entrepreneurial way to do something.
wow.
And everybody else remains in doing what they're best at. So either both the sisters are homemakers and the brothers were into agriculture.
Wow.
My mother is an advocate, and my grandfather was an advocate general. So if you look at it, my mother's side of the family is completely from the legal background, and dad's from the agricultural background.
Wow.
And then it's just both of us, Sunil and me. And I came in formally and joined the business in the year 2003. And Sunil, of course, joined much earlier, around 98. So we've been handling everything since then.
So where
with a wonderful team, of course.
So where did you guys study, both of you?
So basically, we are, of course, both not medical doctors. Schooling, of course, we both studied in Hyderabad. We grew up in Hyderabad.
In our famous school of Hyderabad Public School, for the best years of our life. And then I went on to do BCom from Osmania University. Sunil, of course, finished biomedical engineering and then did
electrical engineering.
Yeah.
So I was in the US for some time. So I finished my engineering in the US from Florida State University. After I completed that, returned to India in 1998 and then joined this business. So I've been part of this from 98. Of course, we were involved even earlier. We grew up, as Suprita mentioned. But education-wise, yes, our father is a doctor. He's a radiologist. Both of us are not doctors. But we've been involved with the business from almost when we were quite young.
So there is no other family business which the family is involved. It is the only business as Vijaya Diagnostic which is there, right?
Yeah. So Varinder, I should mention. So I also had another pharmaceutical services business where we were doing some other services, and that company was sold to a US company in 2015. After that, I've also invested in a formulation business where they make some products for skincare. So again, I'm investor and also the largest shareholder, managing director of that company. But again, I spend not too much time there. We have a very good team. They run it. Beyond that, we don't have any other businesses. I mean, this is our only focus.
Lovely. Thank you so much for helping us to understand the past, because it's very, very important. And last question on the family, like how much time Dr. Sridhar Reddy actually give to Vijaya Diagnostic? Like, is it he gets involved into other philanthropical activities as well?
So he's fully involved even today. He's quite active, likes to spend time. He doesn't really get involved too much in the corporate side of things. He likes to sit in our flagship center. Where of course all our national reference lab is there. We have a very high-end imaging modalities. We get almost 1,000 patients a day. So he likes to meet patients. He likes to spend time.
Varinder is a very simple and humble man, and he enjoys talking to customers. So in fact, very recently, there's this old patient who came and he's asking him, "Sir, why have you stuck to this company? Have you not been able to find a job elsewhere?" And he's saying, "No, this company is taking pretty good care of me, so I don't think I'm interested to move." So that's how it is. So one thing very important to him has been, if we spend a lot of time in an area where we actually interact with the customers who are walking in, we understand what we need to do for the business. So that's where he spends his time even now.
Yeah, in fact, he sits in the flagship center, as I mentioned, and his room is right next to our main reception.
So anybody can walk into his room, and that's why all these patients go in.
So next time we are coming to Hyderabad, we are of course talking to him and doing his interview. Okay.
Most welcome.
Most welcome.
So the idea of asking you all these questions, stupid questions, if they are, was, one, investors really need to know that your skin is in the game into only this company. And second, of course, there are a lot of times which people think that there might be an unrelated business, where, God knows if there is any debt or any kind of issues which the promoters, not of course Vijaya Diagnostic, but any other promoters could have taken. So we wanted to just understand those bigger questions, because I think those are very, very important things which an investor looks for.
Yes, absolutely.
Lovely. Now, coming to the company, Tejas and Canal, you can chip in whenever you want. My simple question is, we are looking for a lot of IPOs coming in the diagnostic side. Okay, I really want to understand what is the difference between, let's say, a diagnostic player versus a healthcare hospital company. Why can't a health hospital like a Apollo Hospital, Max or Fortis can't have the business what you're doing? In a very simple language, help us to understand what is this business and how do you make money in this business?
So, Varinder, basically, if you look at diagnostics, it's actually when you compare it with a hospital, diagnostics is one piece of the healthcare solution they are giving, right? Because they are trying to have a patient who comes in, and they have to have doctors, various specialists who look at the patient. If any tests are required, those tests have to be performed so that they can arrive at a diagnosis, and then the treatment require whatever it is, whether it is a surgery procedure or some outpatient treatment. So diagnostics is one part of it. And it's a very important part, because in the last 2-3 decades, if you look at all the areas in healthcare, I would feel that the area where the maximum amount of technological developments have happened is in diagnostics, testing and diagnostic services. Whether it is in pathology, the lab kind of tests, you've gone from having just some basic CBP or sugar to then having cancer markers or hormones, and then you have gone to having even more specialized molecular markers, genetic markers. Now we are talking about predictive tests, where you can test and tell somebody whether he's at risk for something. Similarly, even in radiology, if you look at 1981, when our founder and Dr. Reddy started this center, we did not have anything like an MRI or CT or anything. When you said imaging, you would probably look at an X-ray or at best an ultrasound scan. That was it. But then you have slowly started seeing, CT scans, MRIs, gamma cameras, PET CTs, and all of this has basically been about understanding and being able to diagnose a patient in a faster and better way. So this area itself has seen the maximum amount of technological advances. And if you look at somebody like us, we are focused purely on the diagnostic piece. Our founder said, I want to do pathology, radiology, everything under one roof, so that a patient, if he comes in, whatever test he needs, I should be able to do it in one place for his convenience and give him the report, a reliable report, fast. And that was how we started.
Sunilji, if we can break this up, okay? A lot of retail investors who are watching this, they may understand that जब भी test कराना होता है, वो blood test करा लो या sugar test करा लो. Some of the terminologies which are using pathology, radiology, break it up for a normal investor who's hearing you. Okay, इनमें फर्क क्या होता है?
So, Varinder, when you actually go to a hospital mein diagnostics is one part of it, right? The hospital has many other departments, and diagnostics is a small part. So when you look at a standalone diagnostic like Vijaya, we want to keep investing in getting the best. So any advancement machine mein jo naya hai, whether it is safety for the patient. Now let's take for example a small test like mammography. In India, we see that the highest cancer among women is breast cancer. So typically anybody above 35, 40 years, you need to get at least one mammography test done. Now, you will have many mammographies in many places, but what is important is that it has to give you the least radiation. Because from 40 years, even if I take a life cycle of 65 years and I get it done every 2 years, ek bar one mammography, look at the amount of radiation that will be there. So that is where the importance goes in Vijaya, especially in saying how do we get the latest and also what do we get to be the safest. So both these in line. Now, if you look at a hospital, they typically it's a one part for them, the diagnostics. So they'll get in a machine and life cycle 10, 12 years. So they'll wait for the 10, 12 years to replace it. But in a center like Vijaya, when there's an advancement happening, Most of the times we see कि 5 to 6 years में we make sure that the machine is changed for various reasons.
So Apollo also does this way, ma'am. I'm sure they must also think about the technological advancements, or any other big healthcare provider, if not.
Yeah. So, Varinder, we can't talk about one company,
of course.
In general, if you look at any corporate hospital, their business focus is more on, the inpatient treatment, right? And they have different specializations. So, diagnostics is not really such a single point agenda for them like us, where they're always saying, they may be saying, I want to do some oncology treatment. Yeah, I want to get some kind of other surgical procedure. There are many things going on. Whereas we are a purely diagnostic focused company. So whatever new technology comes in this area, we are usually one of the first to introduce.
But you also set up
in India, what happens is when it comes to healthcare, of the almost 15-20 years that I've spent here, first thing that our patients say as soon as it comes to healthcare, price kya hai? How much discount will you give us? That is the psychology. You can't change it, right? And the same set of us, you and me also would still go to maybe a restaurant, eat, and we'll also leave a tip and come. But when it comes to healthcare, the thought process changes a lot. So now let's say normal things, diabetic home, I want to get a blood test done, sugar test. Every 1.5 months, even though I'll test myself at home with glucometer, every month I have to go and get one good quality sugar test done in a reputed lab. So that's where the difference comes, Varinder, especially when you see so many different kinds of models cropping up. Gara ke sample leke jayenge, or we will do it at 35 rupees, 40 rupees. But what goes on behind it? Are we collecting in a good quality vacutainer? Is the sample collected correctly? क्या टेम्परेचर में ये ट्रांसपोर्ट हुआ लैब को, कलेक्शन के बाद कितना टाइम लगा वो प्रोसेस करने में? All these are very important factors for that right test to be, which is a very important thing. So that's where I think we play a key differentiator between us and also a lot of other players.
And do you also align with hospitals? Like,
yes.
Like you set up Vijaya Diagnostic in various hospitals as a, outsourcing kind of.
So there are two aspects there. One is right from day one, when Dr. Reddy started, he said, I'm a radiologist. Supposing one of my classmates in college was a pediatrician, gynecologist, surgeon, I set up a diagnostic. Those people would have set up a nursing home or hospital. A lot of the small and medium-sized hospital and nursing homes, they may not have the financial ability to invest in high-end equipment. उनको MRI खरीदना है, CT scan खरीदना है, या कुछ specialized lab testing करना है, so they are not probably having that ability. So he said, let us tie up and support these people, because we are not a hospital, we are a diagnostic. Our job is only diagnostics. We are a neutral diagnostic company. So we give them some discount, we give them the best technology and the most reliable testing reports and everything. We support them. So that has been part of our model from day one. We continue to do it. Now, what you asked about is what is called hospital lab management. So we actually, in our 40 years of existence, we have done that for many large hospitals. We have done that in Hyderabad. We have done it in fact, Kolkata. The first time we went to the East India, it was because we went as part of a joint venture where we managed a hospital lab. And in this hospital lab, what we realized is a big hospital, when they're opening up, the investment in diagnostics is always a big part of the hospital's capex, because if they want to buy an MRI, CT, it's quite expensive. So they come and tell somebody like us that, listen, we are starting and we want to build this best hospital. आप आके हमारा सारा diagnostic ले लीजिए and you manage it for us. So we go, we set it up, we run it for them. Day one, when they start, obviously no hospital is going to do well. They have to establish themselves. So we also are sitting there with them, waiting for the hospital to improve their operations. After 3-4 years, eventually, by the time the hospital starts doing well, and they have lost maybe some money, I don't know, but we have also waited. We have not been doing very well. On the day when they start doing well, that is the day they call us and say, ठीक है, अभी ये diagnostic हम चला लेंगे, आप अभी निकल जाइए यहाँ से. So we've seen this happen so many times that we said we will not do this kind of hospital lab management as a business. So we stay away from that.
Guys, one question from my side now. Can you help us understand the industry in the sense, what is the market size? किस type के players होते हैं in this industry? Regional versus national players. How big can this market grow? Because my understanding is that as population ages in India, so possibly the potential of the business is larger. Can you help us understand all of this in the next 4 to 5 minutes?
Yeah, so Tejas, I'll go through that in 2-3 different ways. One, overall industry, if you look at it.
Sureshji, you can share the presentation if you have, okay? So we are giving you the rights if you have any presentation data if you want to share, okay?
No, I'll just give you some data. Of course, we can always mail you data if you want. I'll talk through it. So Tejas, one is this industry in India has been growing. Overall outlook itself, if you look at it, 12 to 13% is the overall growth rate. And that's a function of many things, increase in awareness, the change in demographics, so on. Now, secondly, if you look at our, Vijaya Diagnostic, we are largely a strong player in Andhra, Telangana. If you look at Andhra, Telangana, these 2 states, the out-of-hospital diagnostic services market is about 5,100 crores, right? And we are having a 7% market share in this 5,100 crores. So that itself, is quite small. There is a lot of opportunity to grow in these 2 states itself. And in fact, we are going to look at a lot of the Tier 2 locations, Tier 3 locations in these 2 states, where we are already a well-known brand and people, that brand connect is there. So this is one of our priorities, that we will continue to grow in these 2 states and we'll consolidate our position. If you look at the difference between, supposing our integrated model versus some of the companies, like for example, companies who are doing only pathology, these are 2 very different models. We are quite unique because our concept is that we have these larger centers. We do both radiology, pathology, and advanced imaging. And if you look at our business also, about 93% of our business comes from B2C, like when patients walk into one of our centers and get tests done, which is a little bit of a difference. When you look at some of the other listed companies who are in only pathology, their model, they have usually a B2C, but also a B2B. And B2B means that they will have a network, collection centers or franchisees, जो भी है, जो samples collect करते हैं और उनको भेजते हैं. And usually to do that, what happens is you pass on some channel cost to them, discount, distribution cost, whatever you call it. And the idea is I am getting more volumes, my utilization is going up, I'm passing on something. We never went into that model for 2 reasons. One, in the earlier days, our founder and Dr. Reddy was a little more conscious that if I go to a faraway location, especially a Tier 2 kind of location, how is the logistics? How will this sample actually travel to get to my lab? Because in the lab anyway, you have automation, and you're accredited, everything is fine. But you have no control. If you don't control the sample collection and the transport, and also you don't have a customer connect, you are depending on an intermediary a middleman who's giving you the sample. He said, I'm not comfortable. So even though we could do all those tests, we said we're not going to that B2B. Recently, what we have seen in the B2B space is something different. Earlier, there were only 3, 4, 5 players. Today, you have, I don't know how many players. There are, 50, 60, 70 companies that I've heard of, because so many players have entered this B2B space and started a central lab somewhere. And what they do is they will say that, okay, there is an existing player. He has built a network, some 1,000, 2,000 collection points. If I can go and give a higher discount, then this collection agent will start sending samples to me. So in this competition, what has happened is that these discounting and the deep discounting which has happened has made it a very competitive business. So that is one reason why we are not very big on this B2B kind of model. We have always been B2C, and we thought, okay, we have taken the right decision. At least in our model, it is harder to build because to get a center up running, stabilized, and have patients walking in to build a brand takes time. But end of the day, at least our business is kind of a little bit more sustainable. It may take more time, but the entry barriers are higher. And in fact, if you look at our margins, if you look at our numbers, we have the highest margins in the industry. Our EBITDA margins are over 40%. Our PAT margins are over 20%. Return on equity capital, return on capital is about 43%. And if you look at it on an Indian GAAP basis, it's over 80%. So these margins have come mainly because of only two reasons. One is the B2C, where we are getting this business from patients who walk in. We are not charging higher, by the way, because we are a brand. No premium pricing. Whereas we are charging the same as any normal center. It's just that I'm not giving any discount to anybody. I'm realizing it from the patient directly. And two, we have built some kind of an efficiency in terms of our hub and spoke model. So, wherever we go in a new location, we fully, penetrate that market. We put a hub first, large hub, and once the hub stabilizes, we add the asset-light spokes around it. And this allows us to basically, again, the utilization issue. So we utilize the equipment in the hub fully. We give, whatever reports are given in the same. Yeah.
So the market size for India is how much you mentioned for the regions you operate is 5,100 crores, right?
So just Andhra, Telangana is about 5,100 crores. And if you look at India, I think it is.
So currently the Indian diagnostic industry size is approximately like a 71,000 to 74,000 crore. In the next 2 to 3 years, it's expected to reach almost like a 1 lakh crore. That's the current diagnostic industry, and the expected growth rate of approximately like 13 to 13.5% is the expected CAGR growth rate. And out of this 71,000 India market size, almost like 27 to 29% market share is there in the South India. Out of which, again, if you split it, the major share, almost like a 44 to 45%, is from the these two states. Fortunately, our home markets, Telangana and Andhra Pradesh.
So can you break up the revenue in terms of geography for us, for Vijaya Diagnostic?
Yeah. So out of our revenue, in the last fiscal year, we achieved 377 crore revenue, out of which 80% of the revenue comes from Hyderabad city. And then the balance out of the 20% revenue, 3% comes from Kolkata region. The balance 17% comes from rest of the Telangana plus Andhra Pradesh state.
So,
a very, very concentrated single geography player at this point of time. In fact, one city player, basically, right?
Not really. Firstly, I think if you look at this industry itself, the diagnostic industry in India, if you look at it, only about 17% even today is with the organized players. Even today, it's a largely unorganized industry. And when you say organized, if you look at any branded larger player, they all have a home market, where they have started, and they all have some amount of concentration. The numbers, maybe the percentages may change. In some cases, they've gone out and expanded in a few other places. So revenue has come down from the home market, but sometimes you'll see that the profit, if you look at the profit, where it is coming from the home market. And so I'm not saying that's good or bad. That is just a reality of the way this industry is.
Tejas, and another key differentiator would be this integrated model. Because if you look at the other listed peers, they're mostly pure pathology chains. So, and they have these thousands of touch points, and they basically collect samples and they send it to a central lab kind of a facility. But this model itself is unique because it works in this hub and spoke model, which we have in a cluster format. And all centers will have radiology. And because of this, if you look at it, that per patient, I'm able to do 10 to 12% test higher because my offering is also higher. And my testing is more holistic, because if you see, if I have to go in for a surgery, just an example, only 10 blood tests is not going to give me clearance. No, I need an ECG, I need a chest X-ray, and I need a TMT. So if you go to any small center of Vijaya, even the smallest center of Vijaya will be around 1,500 to 2,500 square feet. And there'll be 13 skilled people, one qualified radiologist to give services out of that center. Versus if you look at the sample collection model, where you would say I'm a pan-India player, you're looking at an average size of 300 to 400 square feet, thousands of touch points. And with just 81 centers, I'm able to generate 377 crores, being integrated, being able to offer more tests, having a strong brand loyalty here, and customers walking in. And if I do the same and go deep into our markets of this Andhra and Telangana, which were only 7%, if you see large players, even today, they're at almost about 25 to 27% in their home market, whereas we're just 7% in our home markets of AP and Telangana here. And out of these 81 centers, about 15 to 16 centers are in tier 2 and tier 3 locations where I see there's huge opportunity to grow. Because
So, ma'am,
sorry, Bharat, tell me.
So I'm just thinking, few stupid questions. I agree on the points of that, that the business model of Vijaya is better than other players because it's integrated, pathology, radiology, special imaging, everything is there. B2C is better than B2B. Two questions from my end, okay? I think you told that it's 40 years for Vijaya as a company, right? Around 40 years. So
Yes.
I really want to understand the size of the opportunity because 40 साल में हमारा revenue 400 crore के आसपास हुआ, 377 crore जो आपने बोला, right? It's very, I don't know, is it very small for a country like India and for a player like Vijaya? One, so second, the margins, what you're talking about, 40% margins, I don't want to know the last financial year margins because we all know how COVID has helped, this industry in terms of, excluded revenues and margins. Can I remove the COVID impact if you have those numbers in terms of removing the revenues and what was the contribution of COVID towards the revenue and what are the stable margins the company has done minus last 1 or 2 years?
So, I'll quickly answer COVID first, Varinder. So, last year, of course, we were one of the first to be approved to do COVID testing, but due to some regulatory issues in our region, first quarter, none of the private centers could do COVID testing. So, we also could not do it in Q1. We started from Q2. After we started, of course, we were one of the largest, we were the largest testing player in this region. And as Raju mentioned, about 377, 380 crores revenue. If you look at COVID and COVID PCR and antibodies, we did about 14% last year from COVID. And if you take Q1 of this year, the business, because again, there was a second wave this year, it was about 15%. Right? So that is the impact in terms of revenue. In terms of the profitability, maybe about 2% last year in our EBITDA margins. You can say that there was maybe expansion due to COVID-related issues. Q1, as I mentioned, we were not able to do COVID, so jo bhi cost cutting hua tha, we had to do some negotiation on our rental, and some staff did not come to work. So various issues. So there was a 2% impact. But if you look at our 44% EBITDA, and even if you remove that, we were still at over 40% EBITDA, and north of 40 EBITDA margins is something that we are quite comfortable with. That is something which is sustainable.
So we have been making those kind of margins since 2015,
Raju, why don't you
2019.
explain that?
Yes, Varinder, just to give you background, in the last 10 years, continuously the company has been generating very good profits. In the last 3 years also, if you look at our EBITDA margins, there's a continuous expansion in our EBITDA margins, right from, say, for example, like a 35%, move to again 37%, move to 39%. And the last year, almost like 44%. So even if you exclude like the 2% that Mr. Sunil is explaining because of COVID-related, either change in the sales mix or the cost structure. So we achieved about 40% EBITDA.
So Raju, can you help? Kenil, sorry, please ask.
So out of your total revenue, what is the segment of radiology and pathology?
Yeah, out of the total revenue, 65% revenue comes from the pathology segment, and the balance 35% revenue comes from the radiology and the imaging.
And what is the view on radiology as a future growth driver for the company in the industry? Because many of your listed peers do not want to go into radiology. They are heavily focused on pathology, as radiology is capex heavy and high OPEX business compared to pathology.
So, Kenil, firstly, we started as an integrated player. We never said radiology and pathology, and sometimes, if you talk to our founder also, he will say, how do I, say one or the other? It is like going to a a restaurant and saying, what is the profit you make on a idli versus profit on dosa? He says, it is part of the menu, right? And it was started because of the convenience. Like tomorrow, if you went to a doctor and the doctor says, "ठीक है, X-ray karana hai, CBP karana hai, ultrasound karana hai, and some other test." Our model says that you just come in and you say, "I want all this," it's done. You don't need to go anywhere else. That is how we have always functioned. The fact of CapEx being involved in radiology, yes, absolutely. There is also a concept that because there is CapEx, it is not profitable. But if you look at our margins, I will say that is the best proof that when you have good utilization, it is not necessary that radiology is not profitable. That is not at all, it is not true. And more importantly, if you look at going forward, this kind of a model in terms of the convenience, like let's say a doctor says that, I want to rule out TB in a patient. Very simple example. In India, TB is a very common thing. I cannot do that without radiology and pathology, right? I need to do some lab tests. I need to do a culture. I also need to do an X-ray or a CT scan. It's just part of the diagnosis.
Just look at COVID itself, second wave. Were we able to even treat a single patient without a CT chest? Every case needed a score to see where they were, especially the second wave.
Coming to numbers, Kenil, we proved that the myth about radiology, that radiology is heavy on capex, margins are very low. We proved that is wrong. Our numbers itself, like if you look at our numbers, both the margins, even at the gross margin level, where industry leading margins, like more than 80%, and also at the EBITDA level, more than 40%. It's not that this is the year we got the highest margin. Over the year, if you see, because of the our cost structure, if you look at it, significant costs are more into fixed in nature or semi-variable. So the moment we have been growing at like 15 to 16% CAGR, we have seen more expansion happening at the EBITDA margins. Okay, it's not that we just jumped from 20% EBITDA to 40%. There's a gradual expansion happened in the EBITDA margins up to like more than 40%. And also on the ROC, pre-cash ROC, we achieved more than 40%.
Raju sir, I really want to know this. Ki, जो आपका business है, you will get a delta in your business with the volumes of the number of B2C patients who will come for. ठीक है? तो आपका ये जो margin जो आपने बोला 30, 35, 40% हुआ, तो what is the delta? Why the delta comes in? कि आपका top line बढ़ता रहेगा, but जो operating leverage है margins का, वो किस तरीके से produce होता है आपके business में?
Yeah, and the main reason our operating leverage is there in this fixed cost. Say, for example, of our staff cost, okay, and we have a 200 pool of doctors, okay, and also we have certain contracts like your AMC and CMC contracts and the radiology equipment, okay. So when you take a test on the MRI, okay, the more scans that you do, you definitely have an operating leverage because your technician cost is fixed, your radiologist cost is fixed, your AMC, CMC on the radiology equipment is fixed. Since you have this almost like most of the expenses, almost I can tell you like more than 60% of my costs are fixed in nature. So the more top line you do, the more MRI scans you do or CT scans, okay? So you are able to generate more EBITDA margins, not only on radiology front, even on the pathology front, okay? On pathology, you can see even in the other players. The more utilization you do for the lab, okay? Because there are fixed costs, lab technicians, okay? The lab cost is fixed. The more you add on the top line, you will see expansion EBITDA. Same with the radiology.
Agree. So sweating of assets has been done the maximum in the COVID time. Can I say that now the margins are the highest ever because all your resources, whether it's machines, doctors, technicians, and everything, they have been used during this time. So these are the peak margins for the industry, not for the company.
No, not necessarily. Even pre-COVID, we had close to like I said, if you remove that 2% and look at 41, 42%. We were more or less there even pre-COVID. That is one. And secondly, if you look at COVID, actually, what happened is that, of course, for small centers, unorganized centers, COVID was very bad because they did not have COVID testing and non-COVID was affected. But for the larger players, what basically happened is you lost non-COVID business to some extent, but the COVID testing compensated for it. So it is not like I had X and I added to it. I lost something and I gained something. Eventually, it kind of compensated. But whenever you see a drop in COVID business, the non-COVID business again rises. And in fact, the non-COVID business margins are actually going to be better than COVID, because COVID PCR, आज के दिन आपको almost every state has put a cap, and because of the price cap, it is margin dilutive in fact.
Got it. So one question from my side. So today your gross block is how much, sir?
Almost 285 crore.
No, gross block I'm saying. Gross block. Gross block. Okay.
1 second, just give me this back. I'll just tell you.
Kenil, what is the number of gross block right now?
Approximately 40
I'm just telling you.
नील सर, तब तक आप बता सकते हैं कि till Raju finds out the gross block numbers and all, कि अभी भी ये 380 करोड़ सर, ये नंबर 40 साल में इंडिया के हिसाब से छोटा नहीं है. Like I'm just trying to understand since what you have achieved in the last 40 years.
India is a very big country, Varinder. आप ऐसे पूछेंगे तो even if I was 3,000 crores, it would be very small, honestly. But okay, let me put it this way. As Suprita mentioned, and this is true even of some of the other companies, in diagnostics. A founder who's a doctor started, maybe day one he didn't even think he is doing business. It was an extension of his profession. And, we grew slowly, steadily. And even the growth in the early stages, we always thought that we should only do what we can when we
सुनील सर, मैं ये नहीं पूछ रहा. I'm just thinking that 70,000 करोड़ का मार्केट इंडिया में हो गया, जैसे आपने बोला, और whatever 5,100 करोड़ का आपका जहां वो ऑपरेट करते हो वो साइज है. In the last 40 years, because you have moved along with the industry, right? You have grown with the industry, and we are around 400, whatever, 380 crores and
so
all.
We have been growing at this 15-16% actually, which is in the recent past. Not earlier, we were growing maybe faster also. But that's a good industry. We are faster than the industry. We will continue to grow at that rate. We don't see any challenges in that. But I can only tell you that our model, this integrated model, because it is also having radiology and we build larger centers, we do a B2C model. The constraint is not the capital. It is not that मैं आपको 1,000 crore दूंगा तो you can open 50 centers next year, because it is not just the equipment, right? You need to
have
find the right
location,
right
size,
people, doctors, talent, train them.
You don't want to dilute that experience also, no, Varinder. And it's something that you build. See, if you ask me about 2-3 years back, what is the market size? I would say, how am I concerned? As long as I'm growing and doing something meaningful,
Got it.
I'm of some use, that's how we've grown.
So we are told that there are 10 minutes more, okay? So I will honestly want Tejas and Kenil to ask all the financial questions, as they can. So because that's important for a lot of...
It's all for Raju.
Yeah, Varinder, just to give you the number, on the property, plant and equipment, the capex, the gross block number is 272 crore rupees as at March 2021.
Okay. So just wanted to check. So, what are your current facilities? How much revenue you can scale up? Because ultimately you will be limited by the time that a customer will spend in your center. So how much maximum revenue can you do on the current gross block?
So in diagnostics, of course, radiology, yes, it's a little easier. You can look at an MRI and say, I can do this many scans a day. But broadly, if you look at us, I think we have built a significant capacity, because even in the lab side, if you have 11 processing labs today and then central national lab. So capacity by and large is not a big issue. The growth will come from...
in the last 2 years, Tejas, almost close to 30 odd centers opened. And COVID also happened last year. So there is, all these centers also have to ramp up and come to full utilization, which we will see in the next couple of years. How many centers?
34 centers we opened, Tejas, in the last 3 years, 34 centers. And then we see, we expect that a lot of potential is there from these centers, because in the last financial year due to COVID, we couldn't see their full potential. So we expect
their
full potential going forward.
So you can basically almost double the revenues, is what you're saying.
We can't really give you.
How many? Right, fine.
We can't give you a forward-looking statement, Tejas. But what I can tell you from the experience, what I tell you, Tejas, okay, pre-COVID, we have been growing like from 2017 to 2020. If you look at our revenue growth, almost like 15 to 16% is the revenue growth. Okay.
No.
And then
what I was asking, no. What I was asking is not the timeline. I'm only saying on your current gross block, what is the full potential of revenue? Is all I'm asking. From the current revenue, can you double the revenue or can it be 3x? Only the revenue potential is what I'm asking. I'm not asking the timeline for it.
See, if you look at capacity, we could do even potentially.
No constraint in the capacity utilization, Tejas. Why I am telling is because it's a hub and spoke model, right? So the processing lab has got that potential. Okay, the more you add the spokes around it, okay, as and when you are supplying these samples to the hub, there's no constraint on the lab
utilization, Tejas, because you are spreading it out across multiple hubs, right? And then what happens is in most of the lab work, typically you can upgrade and increase utilization on the existing equipment. So as volumes grow, you can also grow that. It's only adding a module to it.
Got it. Kenil, you had a question?
So मैम एक सेंटर के लिए मतलब आपका केपेक्स कितना रखते हैं, मतलब सेंटर करने के लिए व्हाट इज द ब्रेक इवन पीरियड, कितने साल में आप वो रिकवर कर देते हैं, 2 साल 3 साल?
Go on, Raj.
Kenil, typically we have two type of center formats. Okay, one is the spoke center format, the other one is the hub center format. For a spoke center format, you need like 90 lakhs to 1 crore capex, and for a hub center format, since it has advanced radiology modalities like an MRI and CT, we need 11 to 12 crore rupees of capex. These are typical investment that we do in the diagnostic center. And coming to the break-even period, the P&L break-even period, for both the center formats, we're able to achieve the break-even in the first quarter itself because of the quick ramp-up that we see in our home markets because of the strong brand recall. And coming to the payback period, Kenil, what we have seen in the past is that the average revenue that we get from these small spoke center formats, on average, it's like 2 to 2.5 crore rupees. Okay, that's why we tell our model is quite different. Okay, with 80 centers, we're able to do like almost 1/3 of the revenue of a large center, large chains who have got like almost like more than 1,000 centers or 2,000 centers. So the average spoke that generates is approximately like a 2.5 crore. So that's why we see the payback period for this type of a spoke center is very quick, somewhere between like a 12 months to 18 months. And when it comes to when it comes to the hub center format, which is the large center format, the average revenue that we get is approximately like a 10 to 11 crore rupees is the average revenue that we get. And we don't look at the payback period for the hub on a standalone basis because the whole idea of setting up a hub when we go into a new geography is that once it stabilizes in a span of, say, for example, like a 12 months to 14 months, then we add the asset-like spokes around it. So we need to measure the performance as a cluster as a whole. When you take a cluster with a hub plus 2 or 3 spokes around it, we can consider around like 3 to 3.5 years is the payback period for this type of a cluster.
Okay. So radiology, advanced radiology will be done at your hub model, and basic X-ray and all will be done at a spoke model.
Yes.
Yeah, the hub will have both basic as well as advanced. The spokes will have only basic. Yes.
Okay.
Out of our 80 centers, Kenil, 20 centers are the hub centers. So all these hub centers will have the advanced radiology modalities. And the balance 60 centers, which are spoke centers, will have the entire basic radiology, like your X-ray, ultrasound, 2D echo.
One other question on the, at an industry level, is there a clear link that as the population of a country ages, the requirement for diagnostics is also higher? Well, intuitively it looks like a correct argument, but is that reality? Is that happening in India?
See, obviously, intuitive, yes. I don't have a report or something where I can give you a definitive answer. But yes, in India, if you look at it, it is age-driven. There is also an increase in, chronic lifestyle diseases also. lifestyle related changes and the disease pattern is changing. So that
and also a lot more public awareness, no, Tejas. You have the Google patients also coming in, right?
Yeah.
So out of the total disease profile, also like 55% of the disease profile is coming from the NCD, that is the lifestyle diseases.
Yeah.
So yeah, this Google also is unique.
They read it up and they want to get tested, even though we don't encourage
so basically,
that.
So Tejas bhai,
related question. Just 1 minute. So sir, this decade will be a defining decade for the diagnostic sector, right? And would it be like would an approach like grabbing market share take precedence over profitability? The bigger the better, because if you have a brand going, right, and with such a large opportunity, would it be more like a how the startup ecosystem usually works? Just go and grab the market share first, and then we'll make profit. Is that kind of an approach more workable, or is it going to be like slow, traditional business more workable?
Tejas, I think mentioned earlier. I was telling Varinder that just because I give somebody 1,000 crores, he cannot open. So to summarize it, I'll say that if you think bigger is better, what we are thinking is bigger and not better is a very big danger. If I just open bigger and open 50 centers, but my service levels or my quality of service goes down, end of the day in a B2C model, you are only as good as, I can say 40 years, but I'm only as good as what I did today. So we are very careful that whatever expansion we do, we should be able to manage that growth. If I grow beyond my capabilities and dilute my services, then that will have an impact on my model. The business is growing, of course. Yeah.
Sir, we have last 5 minutes left. Can you push, please?
एक क्वेश्चन सर, आपके listed peers अभी PPP model पे बहुत focus करते हैं. What are the reason you are not going into that model?
So Kenil, we are, of course, we have been in this business long time. So we have evaluated PPP very long time ago. We have even participated in tenders with Philips Pharmeasy. We stayed away from that. One is because we have always been a B2C company, where we're interacting with the customer. Whereas in PPP, it's basically a government tender-driven business. You participate in a tender. After that, a government hospital may install your machine, and you have some contract life. So obviously, you don't know what happens after the contract life. That is one. 2, receivables come through the government, whereas in our model, the patient pays us. And 3, because of the competition in the tendering, when people say that you have to do an MRI for 2,300 rupees, if that means that I have to do a study in 10 minutes, I should not print films. I can't have a very senior radiologist. There are some compromises that are made in that model. And we were not comfortable with that. So it's just our decision that, we said...
and we prefer to be more customer-centric and grow this way again. So it's a conscious decision.
So I have last 2 questions.
Yes, Virendra, we're back there.
So,
yes.
So you can avoid or whatever, okay? See, one thing which worries me is this technological evolution and these Pharmeasy and all these players coming into this industry. I don't know, how things will evolve, change, a lot of players are geographically focused and not pan-India. And with these guys coming in who have lots of money to burn, they can do anything. I don't know whether you want to share your views on this or not. Second thing which I really want to know is the IPO as well. Please educate the viewers also about the IPO. Kitna paisa raise karna chahte ho? Kya pricing hai aapka? Expected market cap at the higher end kya hoga? Third question is that what is the shareholding structure right now? Whether you have given shares to your doctors, partners or anything, please. I promise these are last questions.
Sure, Varendra.
We don't have much time, so I'll go through very quickly. Shareholding first. We have a private equity investor, Kedara Capital and Karakora. So they had 40% in the company, and the promoter and the promoter group had the rest, the 60%. Of course, we have also an ESOP plan now, which is about 0.83% held by not only managers, but even we have got some old staff, 83 say you have phlebotomists, even they have qualified for our ESOPs. So the issue is an OFS. Kedara and Karakoram are selling 30 out of their 40%. So they will still have 10%. The promoter group is selling 5%. So 35% is being offered in the issue. After the issue, the PE investor will still continue with 10%, and the promoter group will have about 55%. About 0.3% has been given by the company to some of our senior doctors. This is apart from the ESOPs. So these doctors will own about 0.3% in this. This is the shareholding and the details of the issue. Coming to your Pharmeasy question, I can't comment on Pharmeasy.
Market cap क्या होगा sir company का at the IPO price?
The price band is at the lower end 522 and at the upper end 531. So you can say approximately about 5,400 crores is the market cap. And of course, the company has about 252 crores of cash on the balance sheet as on June. We are debt-free company. That is the valuation numbers. Any doubts on that?
Sir, but इतना अच्छा company है तो OFS क्यों कर रहे हो?
So
35% going for OFS, like, I don't understand that.
No, so as I mentioned, we have a private equity investor who they have their own unka industry ka jo bhi fund life, they have concerns. So they are offering 30% out of this 35. It is coming from them. However, they are also keeping 10% because they are quite happy with it's been a good journey and they are also happy with us. They want to continue to stay invested. But from the company's point of view, when we looked at this IPO, obviously we are not raising money for the company. But we looked at two other factors. One is we said when we go out of these two home states, this IPO will give this company a brand visibility. Vijaya ke liye jo brand visibility milega, that will help us. Even if we go to Eastern India, we need that brand visibility. Secondly, we are also quite actively looking at some inorganic growth acquisitions because we also have cash on the balance sheet. And that again, if you find a good company, good chain, good asset, being listed always makes it a little bit easier to do such acquisitions. That is what we have realized.
No,
these are the two main.
Sir, 35, 25% dilute karna hai SEBI ke hisab se, that I understand, right? That your private equity guy is taking care of. But promoter ko 10% dilute karne ka zarurat nahi hai, OFS mein.
No, promoter is there only 5%.
5%.
Sorry, 5%. 5%.
5, yes. Yeah.
Okay, anyways, the last question.
Post-issue, the promoter and promoter group will still own 55%.
Lovely.
And we don't have any other businesses where we are planning to invest any money. So I think that is the. Yeah.
So last question of Pharmeasy, sir, and the technology disruption which this industry can see, if you can answer.
So.
Varinder, it's not about Pharmeasy, it's basically about any aggregators. There have been a lot of aggregators in the market for quite some time now. And more or less, we see that every region they go and they tie up with a leader and they want to bring in some volumes. And it's not basically, historically, we've seen that for us, even though we tied up with multiple aggregators, revenues have been less than 1%. Because when it comes to diagnostics, it's more of a service. It's not like a product where a medicine, I go to 3 or 4 websites, see a price and buy the cheapest one because I still know I'm getting the same brand. But in diagnostics, you want to know how the sample is collected, kahan pe gaya, kaisa gaya, because your treatment is dependent on that, your surgery is dependent on that. Price is just not the factor there. So historically, we've not seen too much of an impact, and I really don't have much to comment on in terms of future.
To add to that one point, because we get asked this a lot. And you take any business, Swiggy, Zomato, and if I'm a very good chef, doesn't matter whether it's ITC or Swiggy's cloud kitchen. At the end of the day, you still need the kitchen and you need the chef. So
we are the diagnostics. So Sunil says wherever it comes from, it will come.
You are the sous chefs, okay, for the diagnostic industry. Okay, guys, trust me, we can continue for 1 hour more, but your people will break my head. Thank you so much for making us learn. Okay, I really enjoyed. We really learned a lot. I'm sure Kenil has 10 more questions. He will tell me, sir, ye nahi pucha, wo nahi pucha. We will fight a lot after this interview.
You can mail us. Please mail us.
Please mail us your queries.
If you have any,
we're happy to answer.
We would like to engage more with you guys once the IPO is done. We'd like to have a,
Sure, definitely, Tejas would love to do that.
Sure,
and thank you all of you for taking out the time to chat with us.
No, thank you and all the best.
All the best for the IPO.
All the best.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.